Very good morning. This is the high time to address the topic on disaster management, particularly for the fire disaster. Why it is so important for the globally? We all know that industrial revolution happens, the urbanization is booming up, but despite our global is warming. We know that COP we know Agenda 21, we know Biodiversity Act, Environmental Protection Act 1986, but so far we are not managing our global 1.5 degrees Celsius is rising, the heat wave is generated, but despite the fire is natural and also the anthropological effect. You know that fire disaster is one among the key pillars because we have a Panchabhutas, one is sky, air, and water, earth, and so on. But despite this is one concept to address in a very ridiculously because of the anthropological situation are more prone. Because what we saw in the field, that is what the dimension for the mirror, that is the quote addressed by the Abraham Lincoln. So, why it is important? We have a forest cover nearly the 21%, right now it will be 25%, and we have a global agenda to making a afforestation that 33% of the forest cover should be in the international global participation. But our own forests are burning. We saw the evidence of the Chamundi Betta in Karnataka, and we saw globally in the United States of America, they burn it out in such a magnificent way, the kilometers to kilometer. If you want to see the statistic in what way, we know the each and every annual segment of the fire disaster, it may be a 30,000 30,000 cases are there. And you know that each case has fertile in nature and also the non-fertile in nature. What do you mean by fertile? Fertile is a complete death and non-fertile is an injured part. So any situation is vulnerable. That should be an address in the topic of interest of disaster management. Particularly, I have something to show you. One particularly is India is witnessing urban consumption. We know that we are a developing country. 143 crore people are there, and we are third largest global economy, and upcoming the fifth trillion economy to reach. But despite our urbanization are having an industrial policy to boon, but fire mitigation is bad. So it is very high condition to address this topic. Let us see on climate action change. You know that the rising temperature or increases, Himalayan peninsula are depleting and global warming increases about 1.5 degrees Celsius, and so far we could not address this topic in a particular way. We are the homo sapien. It is not a task of only for the human. It is also for the animal conservation and also for the marine ecology, and also it is a global impact assessment, right? So we have a protocol on the environmental impact assessment. There the industrial policies are very much after interested on how to mitigate the fire policies. So agencies are recruiting the fire managers so that they can have an address on it, because if one fraction of second is mismatched, the fire could be collapsed in such a way the whole migrant people or any homo sapiens are which is a tremendous expertise are collapsing a globe. So this is one high point. And you see, there is a statistic in here. One statistic may not be emphasized for the one side does not fit. This is the formula for here. And forest survey. You know that about 21% of the forest cover are there, and India is moving ahead for about 25% of the forest cover, and in the globally network, the United Nations are specifying about 33% of the global network in the forest cover should be maintained. But despite we saw the Chamundi Betta, we have an international spear in the United States of America, it is burning the fire, right? It may be the natural disaster, it may be an anthropological disaster, but fire is the fire. Fire can be have a good material, but it is a bad master. So it is a good servant. Fire can be a good servant, but it is a bad master. So earlier adaptation is better than cure. That is what the principle here. Because we have a forest cover in the state like Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Maharashtra so far, and we have a Karnataka too. But we are not maintaining our globe with respect to a forest disaster. If any heat will become, you saw nowadays Karnataka is heated up about 40 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius in the North Karnataka region and so far in the coastal network region. But the fire disaster happens when the propagation of the heat wave is tremendously occupied and tremendously coupled. The global network policy are binding in nature, but despite our own awareness is not binding, that is the major problem to address, to eradicate the fire disaster in the management scenario. You saw 70% of the high-rise buildings volatile to fire safety norms. Why? We have a high-rise building, more than a 6 plus objective building, more than a 24 objective building, but despite 70% of the buildings are not regulated through the proper channel to mitigate the fire disaster. That is the vulnerability. Whether this is the lack of awareness or the community participation are lagging or the state and center monopoly or the coordination is lagging, that is not the task. But despite the urbanization is booming, urbanization should boom in terms of the awareness. That is the task. And you know that there are two principles here. One is natural causes, another one is anthropological causes. You know, high impact prolonged the drought and lightning induced the spark. Lightning means thunderstorms and friction between the dry vegetation. In terms of the Deccan Plateau, you saw the Karnataka Raichuru, Karnataka Bidar, and if you go with the Indian mindset, Rajasthan, Gujarat are the high prone city, and Maharashtra, when the urbanization is peaking there, and the global network of the forest is more prolonged to a Maharashtra region. So this is one address. And what is human made? That is also called as anthropological system, anthropological electrical short circuit. It is major phenomena. 40% of the urban fires happen on particular region, and gas cylinder leak. This is oftenly because of the negligence or not tightening up the gases, and it is not globally aware how to make use of the good tightness of the gases and so on. Burning of the crop residue. You know, Punjab and Haryana are the great granaries of India. But despite, when you come to the March and January month, Delhi air pollution is peaking off and the storms will occur. We are not anything which is not visible on the air condition phenomena. Why? Because of the staple burning of the Punjab and Haryana. When the staple burning is occurs, and you know that Delhi condition of the air pollution, that is equivalent to 25 cigarettes of consuming. So it is a great vulnerability. World Health Organization also emphasizes on it, and United States of Security and Environmental Concern are objective on it. But despite industrial accident and chemical petroleum mining, you know that Bhopal gas tragedy, you know that Visakhapatnam gas leak. So these are the very key example of fire disasters. Cigarette bursts and company fires in the forest. People youth are not aware about how to manage the ecosystem, whether it is a beach or forest. But students or otherwise any kind of youth are going to have a smoke on the particular fires, and fire attack will be hampered for in a fraction of a second. It will take a less than second to burn it out. So it should be maintained in a long-lasting way. It will take a long time. But to eradicate the system, it will take nearly 1.5 seconds. So this is what the major impact of human anthropological fire disasters conditions. We have a type of fire disaster here. What is the type? We have to know that. Class A to Class E. Class A is a solid wood cloth paper that is generalized, and also the Class B, flammable liquid, that is a chemistry lab or chemical aspirants, and kerosene, especially diesel and petrol. It is more often used in a vehicular system or in a daily life of our kitchens. And fragmented gases, that is LPG gases, and metals, electrical fires, and surface ground crown. So this is the chart which is addressed from the security of the fire coding. So we have a code on network of building constructions and so far. There, this is one concept of type of fire, the zones, type A to type B. You have to remember and you have to quote in examination whether the fire topic or arises. You can write it easily. And you have a chart here. This is one of the best chart what I say. Forest fire in India. So far where we saw the forest fire. You saw here, there is a forest fire, Karnataka is maximum, and Haryana, Punjab is very limited, and Rajasthan, you know the Deccan Plateau, it is very heat, and heat wave is more than that any temperature, global warming is more, so Rajasthan is much more, and Dadra Nagar Haveri, Madhya Pradesh is witnessing high peak condition, which is in black condition, and Maharashtra, 16,000 deaths happen, and cases are there, Odisha, 20,000, Chhattisgarh 18,000, Mizoram 6,000, and if you concentrate the northeast peninsula, there is the highest is in Assam and Nagaland, Tripura and Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. And Uttarakhand is also a hilly area, but despite propaganda of the fire attack is more. You saw the condition assessment of the fire here, the number, numerical number, where the excessive fire attack accident are happened. Number one, where there is a forest cover, that is a much more fire incident happen. You saw Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and also Karnataka, Maharashtra. So this is a one peak point. And if you concentrate here, there is Assam and also for the Nagaland minimum and Mizoram. So this is a hectic Deccan Plateaus and northeast hilly region, right? And if you concentrate the hilly region of Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh. So this is a high point. So you can write it in terms of the statistic journey and also the geographical condition in terms of mapping for the fire disaster where it is occur in a huge phenomena. It is need not to be mentioned everything, but you can quote which is highest and which is lowest in terms of the mapping, so that you will get a 10 out of 6 and 15 out of 7 in the examinations. And the constitutional legality, we have to address the topic in terms of the both in the management sphere and the constitutional legality and the sustainable development aspirations. So you know that it is adaptation is the better than mitigation, because we are not finding enough where it will come, when it will come, but it is in our control to mitigate the things in a very responsible manner. So Constitutional Legal Prevention of the Air and Environmental Protection Act 1986 and also the Forest Conservation Act 1980 and Paris Agreement, that is a great agreement of Agenda 21, biodiversity and the climate action, and there is a protocol, Kyoto Protocol, Montreal Protocol, and also Paris Agreement, that is one among the key pillars here, and environmental impact assessment notification, how to make a good environmental policy in terms of the industrialization. We have to get an approval from the EIA so that it will be very curative enough. And 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment are emphasize our own local body network to community participation in terms of the disaster management, especially in terms of the fire attack and so on. We saw the Finance Commission, you know. Finance Commission is addressing the vertical and the horizontal devolution of the money, which is from the center to state, right? So in that one component is based on the disaster management also. So 14th and 15th Finance Commission are given such a magnificent contribution for the disaster management fund. So then you can write the NK Singh committee on that particular 14th Finance Commission and so far. So this is a one good objective to write over a brilliant answer to take address on it. And reform and technological intervention. What kind of reform? You know, technology is a boon. We saw Ukraine is one among the technological country, and India is an innovative country. So where there is a technology, there should be an innovation. Where there is an innovation, there should be a positive, useful thought. So this is one concept. global information system on a fire system attack so that we can measure when it is and what it is and so forth, and real-time forest fire alert system. There must be one multi-coordination body to address on the topic, and use of remote sensing of drone and fire detection, damaging mapping. So it is a clear-cut phenomena to tackle it, whether it is anthropological or natural, and IoT, Internet of Things, smart smoke detectors in buildings. So buildings, you know that the high-rise buildings, more than 70% of the high-rise buildings are in vulnerable state. So you can address in very beautiful matter. Automatic sprinkler system, that is a thermal operation. We have a nuclear power plant. There will be a sufficient fire non-attack should be there. We are maintaining it in a sophisticated way because huge bombardment happen. But we are neglecting in our home like a kitchen. We are neglecting. So it is a high point. That is what it is suggested. Automatic sprinkler system. So these are the technology we can use it. You can write it in a solution over there. And role of community participation. Why we need a community participation? Recently, 2 days back, we saw in Bangalore itself the fire disaster attack, and also in the year about 20,000 plus cases are emerged. More than 30 plus throughout the globe and throughout the India. So this is what the condition of high peak point, and fatal accident is more than the infatal, right? So fire attack is more on fatal accident. It is not feasible enough to drive the force in terms of the disaster response. Involving tribal community. All the PVDT, the particular vulnerable tribal people are sufficient in the forest. They are the father, and they are the professors of the forest, right? But despite, when the accident occurs on the fire, it is a high peak point and high responsibility to maintain them as a source of human therapy and humanity, and also that they are the brothers of our globe. So this is also one high peak point. So involving the tribal community in terms of the forest rescue or the forest control, that is what the immediate effect. We know so far from the management, technology plus administration is divided by management, right? We need a technological management, we need a administrative management. But despite, those management are propelled enough when the official network are coupled, the NGO and private and the government body, so that all the trilateral combinations are strengthened enough and making it very decisive in nature. And forest management through community participation is one among the examples. The community consists of the tribal and the panchayat, local panchayat, and the state and center coordinations and international best practices so far. I think the international best practice you consider the United States of America, because huge number of cases are deployed over there in terms of the fire attack, and Australia community-based fire wise program, and also the Japan earthquake resilient fire safety protocols, and Europe satellite-based integrated wild monitoring. So it is one of the beauty of the best practices. We can adopt it. It is not necessarily we are not away with the international global practice, because it is a high time to reach our own globe. In terms of India and peninsula like Deccan Plateau, coastal network, northeast India and hilly region and cold temperature Himalayan trench. So there is a diversity in India. So those diversity should coupled in terms of the coordination way to address one single topic of one single Panchabhutas, that is our fire. So USA, Australia, Japan, Europe, that is a great best practices. You can write it in exam. You know that preparedness is only shield against disasters, right? And safety is not expensive, it is a priceless. So when we are expecting the safety we will expect to after the consecutive actions are propelled or before the consecutive actions are propelled. So safety is the priceless activity. So each and every second is the eyeball for rescuers in the humanitarian prosperity and the global prosperity and the environmental prosperity. So this is what the condition. Why you know that challenges happen for the forest fire is the lack of awareness, lack of system, coordination network in the looping, and central and state impossible monopoly, and also huge urbanization trapping enough the system, and the heat wave is generated in a natural calamity, and electrical fusions in the anthropological system. So there are many networking, many systems to hamper the challenges addressed on the fire attack. It is high peak point to address on it. This is one map, you know. One of the interesting map you can see where there is a 21% of the forest. One is Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Jharkhand, and Maharashtra, Assam. So Madhya Pradesh, right? So those states are very concerning about very number of forest fire cases are deployed. So you can write it these statistics because it is addressed in the Hindu paper, and you can write it easily. And sustainable development goal. You know, sustainable means long term, and development means the goal of objective in terms of the propagation. So fire disaster is an anthropological and natural disaster. It should be reduced. And fatal activity is more. That is a key principle here. Non-fatal activity is very less, and fatal activity is the collapsible point in a humanitarian term, and also for the animal creatures and marine ecology, and also for the global environmental impact assessment. So sustainable development green, reducing the injuries, and 9 safe industrial policies. 11 disaster resilient cities. 13 climate action due to wildlife risk, and 15 prohibition forest ecosystem farm fires. So this is a sustainable development goals. You can write it in a conclusion in the way it needs to be, because it is a high time. Sustainable Development United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goal. There among the life below water and the life above the land are the most phenomenal interest, and climate action Sustainable Development Goal number 13, and industrial policy Sustainable Development Goal number 9. So we have to write in immediate effect. And you have a case study here. You can closely approach the Uttarakhand forest fire 2016 and 2022. So what happens there? The large-scale destructive due to drought, rain, needle accumulation are happened, and lead to national level intervention of NDRF deployment. So it is very peak point, right? And a large scale of destruction happened due to fire accident. And it is not only the case of Uttarakhand, it is also the case of Mumbai. Mumbai Kamala Mills fire. You know, Mumbai is the city of urbanization, where there is a huge population and huge urbanization in an industrial manner. There is a conjugative actions on a vulnerability in terms of anthropological disaster of fire. So 14 deaths due to violation of the fire norms resulted the strict municipal audits. So what is happened and what is the takeaway? That was I have given, and you can write it in a very significant way with the case study. And it is not the only the vulnerability case, how we manage that is also one key point. The Odisha community fire management. You know, the tribal population are the professionals of the forest, and the father of the forest and mother of the forest. The tribal community trained early detection of the fire in terms of accident, and thereby successfully reduced the 30 to 40% fire incident. So this is what a global supply chain networking and coordination maintenance. You can write it in a futuristic sentence. Obviously, it is not in the case of Odisha. It can be even Karnataka, even Maharashtra, Telangana, where there is a forest network or boom. There are two key geographical factors or the climatical factors. One is the Deccan Plateau. It is dry land and entrapped with the heat wave, and also the forest cover. That is a forest deciduous forest, but it is also a subjected to interpretation of fire disaster. So there are two principles. One is Deccan Plateau, another one is forest land. So fire disaster is a recurring threat in India due to urban density. And you know that early detection like Odisha tribal community management and United States of America, Japan model, and also the Brazil model of fire risky overwhelming. It is our high time to peak address on it. More than a adaptation, we need a prevention, and more than a prevention, we need a control, and more than a control, we need a awareness. Is there any doubt?